stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rainier? Yes. Kirzalo? Here. Howard?
Here.
German? Moran?
Here.
Eustace? Winfrey? Here. And we also have Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. Okay, we have the minutes from the December 4th meeting for approval.
I move for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Is there any public comment? Okay, from the old business. Okay, we'll start right in with you, Nick. Update on the Social Security. Good morning. Thank you.
I gave everyone who didn't get extra copies just a brief memo to kind of follow along with, but this is an update on several of our projects. I'll start with Social Security. I'm pleased to report that we have a scheduled closing Thursday 6 at 2:30 on Social Security.
All right.
How are you?
By the land use.
This is I'm not going to go into all the details, but it's been a winding road to get to this point. This follows extensive due diligence, and really, this is best practice is to do this due diligence, but the curveball in this was the owner of this property, and in the past there was, as you remember, there was a no further remediation process started, which we never had any real concern, but at the same point we felt an obligation to the public body to investigate all that. So that's why the owner did a lot of his costs, extensive costs to get that no further remediation letter, and then we spent some money exploring that too. And we feel like we've done all that we can do to make sure this is a good, clean site. So that's why we're moving forward with closure. So that'll be this Thursday, February 6th. So that's step one. Step two, I just wanted to kind of update you and keep you posted. Design work continues with Cordigan and Clark, who is a county board approved vendor. They've been meeting with the land use department, laying out the design for the building. We've begun with kind of a wish list, knowing that there's a budgetary limitation to that, but they have done a general layout of the space and some budget estimates. The goal is to get to bid documents. That was part of their scope of work. We're not there yet just because we're kind of finalizing the initial research of what's needed for IT, phones, HVAC, all those kind of things. And then we're going to do kind of a filter and say what are the absolute critical things that need to be done to get the land use department in there and operating. There may be some items that are kind of would be nice to do, and we're thinking at this point that those would be bid alternatives. So if we had enough funds, if the bids came in competitive enough, maybe we could do some additional things, or there's some other things that we would push off to the future. Because this is a building we're going to hold for the long term, so we want to make it as nice as possible, but also sensitive to the budgetary limitations. And part of that calculation is also possibly using some of our what we'll call the green funds, the gas energy money, which in the past, I don't know that we formalized the process, but we said that would go for capital projects, particularly for sustainable projects, and since the land use department has been the leader for the county on that, as far as initiating those projects, working on them, this would be a good showcase for this, and would also stretch our dollars a little bit further. So the HVAC, the roof, windows, lighting, etc. And there are some grant programs we can take advantage of too for lighting that are time sensitive. So we're working on that. So
I'm just going to jump in here in terms of the HVAC. That may be one of the things that we do a little bit later, just because there may be some life currently in it. If we can get 2, 3, maybe 4 years out of the current system, we won't spend that money right away. We'll go in and then do that later down the road.
And we'll make that, the chairwoman and I discussed this, we'll make that very clear in the process so you all know, because the last thing we're going to do is do all this work in a year or two, if it's that short a time, come back and say, okay, now we're doing HVAC, and then you all wonder why are we doing this, we just did. Well, we're trying to get all the life out of the existing materials we can. So just on that project to close, is just the next step, sort of finalize the budget internally. We're not going to communicate that because this isn't bid. We don't want to let all the bidders know exactly how much we're willing to spend, but we will kind of finalize that, working with board leadership and staff. And then the other thing that's identified as an issue that we're going to work on is identifying some additional parking. There is parking in front. Part of the attraction of this building was having parking right there for the customers. We want to preserve that, but we do need some additional spaces for staff, whether that's behind the building, in the city deck, which is what we use now, even though the executive center does have parking, they also utilize some of the public parking. So that's something that it is on our radar, and we are working on, so we'll keep you posted. So, any questions on the security?
I have questions about the HVAC. The equipment is up to snuff, you think, for a couple of years, but what about, is there gonna have to be ductwork changes based on what we're gonna do to the space inside, or the people? Is there gonna be a different number of people than what was originally in the building? Because the number of people will affect what the minimum outside air requirements are. That could affect the equipment, it could affect a lot of stuff, so are we really looking at this? You don't wanna go in there and finish the ceilings, to finish the whole space, and then have to come back later and change the ductwork in the space, because it's gonna cost you a lot more money. You're gonna have to take the ceiling back down again, put it back up. So, before we just say that the units are good for another 2 to 5 years or something, somebody should probably survey that equipment and survey what's there, how much air it really moves, what it does, and make that determination before we decide that we're just gonna leave it alone.
That's exactly right, and Brian is here, and that's one of the things they're working on. First, before we say we're gonna get some more life out of this, they're looking at, based on where the new structure's gonna be, how the cube exhaust is gonna be set, what needs to happen to the flow.
If I could just answer, I'll defer to Brian too. That is something that our professional consultants, I know Don, you have a lot of expertise in that, so they are looking at that. And I know not all of you have seen the space. Denise had the opportunity to see the space of the day. It is a pretty open space right now. We are going to put, the plan is to put some offices in there, so it does change the flow, and we want to make sure that it all will work properly. But that will be, to my understanding, be part of that process, and there's a meeting scheduled with Mike Nicolini, whose maintenance department will be ultimately responsible, so they're working with Brian's people, and whatever work needs to be done to make sure that it's done in the office will be done.
Yeah, I was just gonna tag on, so we're checking the efficiency too, so if it makes more sense to do it now. But also, are we, if we do decide to keep it, are we designing the new one what we need, so if this thing dies a year from now, we're ready to go without having to figure out what equipment we're gonna need?
So we are looking at that. Actually looking at 2 different options there. There are multiple rooftop units up there right now that we're looking at either replacing all of them in kind, 1-for-1 brand new system rooftops, or looking at a centralized one larger rooftop unit that is more efficient and could be more cost effective, and then replace all the distribution tunnel. We're going to look at giving you guys the options, cost implications for that, efficiency, any savings in energy use and so forth, based on the 2 different options that could be available to you.
Other questions?
Yeah. I just want to ask about the closing on Thursday. Where is that going to take place at?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm not involved in that. Closing State's Attorney's Office has been designated by the county executive to handle the actual signing of the document, but I believe something downtown here, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I just want to get us to the finish line.
I just have a comment, Nick. Basically, after hearing about this for years and years and years, are we going to have like some big celebration? Are we going to declare a national holiday, or we got to do something, because this is unbelievable.
And
we're actually doing something, so that's my comment.
And aren't we paying cash so we can like burn the mortgage at the same time?
Well, that is the plan, is to use, we've actually already escrowed the money for this, but this was a cash purchase. And the important thing for all of you to be, I think this is part of the bigger plan to reduce rent. You know, there is a cost to buying a building and retrofitting it to our needs, or design to our needs, but it does have a quick return on investment, because then we will be outside of those lease dollars in a very short term, so that's positive. And we think it gives a better customer experience as far as having the space right there for the, if we do as we plan, have the parking for the public right there, and you get in and get out. So, and it's all on one floor, as opposed to now at the landing strip, because you know it's on 3 floors, it's a little less running, so. But I will say this too, is it is very tight space. I mean, we believe it's adequate space, but there's not lots of room for growth, which we kind of don't expect lots of growth, so I guess it's okay, but it's not, there's not excessive space in this building. It works, but that's not just the future.
Another comment too, can we find the smallest room possible in there and have our committee meetings in there then?
I have a question about these offices. If we say the space is tight, you know, at least in the corporate world, really there are no offices. Even the boss has a desk outside the conference room. Talk to me about how many offices and why we're going with kind of what I would call a retro idea here. Or maybe I'm wrong and there's like 2
Well, I
offices.
don't know if we use retro, but it's, well, you know, I think we have, and I think, I can say based on the White study, we talked about what was basic office space, what were the parameters of it. But just as a practice, it's for supervisors to have private conversations with their staff. We've done that. But it's limited. There's a lot of cubes for most of the staff. That's how it is now. So it's mostly cubes, which gives us flexibility to move around a little bit. We are trying to maximize the shared space, so a conference room doubles as a lunchroom, could be opened up for larger meetings of their staff, because they have approximately 50 staff, but also for the plan review and things like that. When people come in, that's all right up front. So we're, in all our designs going forward, we're trying to maximize multi-purpose space. So we're sensitive to that, but I guess as far as doing away with offices for the senior management, for the supervisors, we didn't choose to do that because we still feel like, and I think the thought among most of our departments is they need some of those spaces just to deal with staff or personnel issues and other things.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
that's
it's
what their little conference room is for.
right.
And also some provisions for consumers who may need to have some private conversations about some issues.
But we those spaces are used for regular employees, especially, and as hopefully as the economy goes back up, those are used, is my understanding, for reviews, or when a customer comes in, a resident comes in, that they can go to a front desk. Where the design is more kind of like a doctor's office, when you sit down and talk to someone, get you started in the process, but then they can carry you over to a conference room, you can lay out a plan over the documents, so. But it is.
But you don't need a real big office to have a private conversation.
And I don't think any of these are
I'm just asking.
I don't think any of these are gonna be real big. So
They're small in the scheme of things.
Right, so there'll be no big. Okay, then move on to the
Other
next.
questions? Okay.
So next item, just to give you an update on First Midwest Building, 50 West Jefferson. This is a long-term project, spanning probably over a decade, honestly, but we have a contract. It has been approved by the board for some time. Spare you all the details. This has been kind of on hold because First Midwest has been working with the city trying to identify their next location to rebuild the facility. We've been pushing them to sign the contract so we can move forward. They are very close to doing that. The targeted exit dates for Explorers 2 through 4 and our actual acceptance is July 1st of this year. That gives them the time to finalize their exit date. They've been doing that continuously, but they have some equipment to order. So that is the targeted date, and we believe that will be met. The receipt of the first floor, which is where their bank operations will remain, and they will pay rent to the county per our contract, is targeted between 24 and 36 months. If they can get out sooner, they would like to get out sooner because they don't want to pay us rent if they don't have to. So, and we stage the contract for the first 24 months at $15 a square foot. After that, it goes up to $20 a square foot. So that's their added motivation. And we have worked very closely with Jim Rolfe at First Midwest. He's been a very good partner on this, but he has some limitations, but some of that is beyond our issue. We just need him to move out. But as part of the contract, we are doing due diligence work. We have hired a vendor, Weaver Booz, who was doing the environmental review. This was held off until we had a contract. So I just gave you some quick notes. They've done their phase 1 ESA inspections and asbestos inspection. They're waiting for the final reports from that, expected later this week. And then draft that report. They are actually doing tomorrow the geotechnical survey, where they're doing soil borings to give us some additional information about the site. On the back page of this, I gave you some narrative from them, but there were, just so you know, some historical addresses there that they looked at, and there was, I should say, a filling station with underground tanks, a printing operation, laundry facility with potential dry cleaning and sheet shop. This is standard practice that they go through and review all this stuff. That's not to say there's a problem, but we want to know what was there before we accept the building. Same thing with the asbestos. We know there's some asbestos in the building that was encapsulated, but we wanted to know how much, and ultimately we're going to have to be responsible for abatement of that. So what is the result of that? So they inspected all those facilities, the main building, and there's an outbuilding, and the soil borings are going to be done throughout the site, both on the main building property and the parking lot. So we expect all of that very soon back, a signed contract very soon. So the next steps for this are to complete the due diligence. We have discussed at committee, and I've discussed with Chairwoman Winfrey about possible use of an outside vendor, just as a third party, to help us review the layout of the building as it stands, not to do any extensive work, but just to assist as a neutral kind of third party, because our thought has always been to put the sheriff's office, move them out of the Eagle building, move the operations that are in the court annex into the space, and this would just help lay it out from a professional's eye, how that would all fit into the space, because this is a short term, and I say short term is hopefully a few years, but this isn't, and it isn't a long-term acquisition, so we don't want to put any more money than we need to in this building. However, in talking with the sheriff's office, there is some concerns about data and phones and things like that, so we have to work through that so that they can function in this building. I would argue it's definitely a step up from their facility at Eagle Building, and it'll give them a place. Yeah, the toilet's flush, the windows closed, there's not snow on the windows, but it's to reiterate, this is a temporary until they move to their permanent facility, which we targeted for Lairway Road, but we think we need to do it. So I would propose, I'll work with the committee and chairwoman and staff and finance just to make sure we have funds, but we're talking a small dollar contract, just somebody to review it and help us kind of point us in the right direction. And then last thing is just to finalize the budget for any items that need to be done to make this space work. But we want to get on that now, beginning of the year, so that by mid-year we're ready to move in, do whatever we need to do, and get the move done. So by late summer, early fall, some of those moves are happening, and we can continue on with the other projects related to those. Because this is the dominoes falling. Now these pieces start moving, now we can move on to the next phase, which I'll touch on in a minute. But just as far as First Midwest, that's kind of where we're at the moment. So any questions?
So we know that at some point we're gonna have to abate asbestos, and based on these new things they're gonna take a look at, we could have some kind of chemicals, gasoline, dry cleaning. I mean, are we getting estimates for what all of this cleanup is gonna be? And secondly, if we do find chemicals underneath, which no one knows about right now, if they're there now, we do find them, are we setting ourselves up for some liability when we start putting people in there?
Well, I guess I'm not a professional on this, but what I think this is more letting us know that it's there. They're not saying there's a problem. It's just identifying that as there were these facilities, but that's why we're going a step further with the soil borings and things like that to see if there's any issues. So it's all part of the standard process that what I've been told the private sector does all the time when they do acquisition of facilities. So I'm not ringing the alarm bell just yet. This is just more identified historically. This is through paper documents, what was there, that kind of stuff. So, but yes, if there is any identified problem, and we have to get it up, and we want to know, obviously, before, and that's why we're doing it now. And this site in particular, because the intention is to dig down and build a court facility, whereas like the Social Security, we we're just building upwards as far as inside walls design. So, all I can say at this point is I will keep you posted of any findings that are, if there is any, but
Yeah,
we're not.
those we
we're not
don't know yet, right? But we do know asbestos. Do we know what it's gonna cost us to abate that?
That's why we're in this study, was to try to get a number.
Number.
Because whether, I'm not saying, I don't think we need to do anything right now, but the goal, at least has been discussed in the past, is eventual demolition of that building. So when we demo it, we would be responsible for the abatement as part of that process. So we want to know how extensive and just help us for future cost estimates when we plan the budget for those projects. So the thing I want to caution, because with Social Security, there was a lot of discussion about potential issues, is I don't want to alarm people because, I mean, First Midwest has been operating there. They have monitored the building. They don't have any concerns. Their employees are throughout the building, so I don't want our employees to be concerned because there's nothing that's we found. But we still are, as our obligation, doing the due diligence to make sure that we don't just trust what we verify that it's all good. So, but I will keep this committee posted on developments and we're monitoring very closely. I've been getting updates from Weaver Movers on their progress. So, and that's like I said, tomorrow they're doing the sort of bookings.
Okay, Margot, Steve, then Bob.
None of these are our problems. If these problems are bigger than a bread box, we don't have to close our building. So I wouldn't be concerned about it. The building's owner is the one that's responsible for any environmental hair that's found there. It has nothing to do with us. And if we don't like what we see, we either negotiate the price, it either impacts the price, or we just say, you know what, this isn't a place where the county needs to spend as a responsible steward of our assets. So, you know, there's nothing, and we definitely want to find every single thing that's there. You know, dry cleaning fluid is a lot worse than an empty underground tank, you know, which is, having been in that business, I can tell you, it's not the world's biggest problem, even though people think it might be. So, yeah, I mean, some problems are big and we don't have to close. It's First Midwest Bank, it's their problem right now.
And that's, as I've talked about previously with the other building, is that's why you do the due diligence. We have a contract, because now we're expending funds to do this stuff. But you're right. If we find something that's really a problem, we go back to First Midwest and say, we're not closing unless you cover the cost of this fix. But I'm not, I just don't want to worry people necessarily. I don't think there's any major problems at this point, but that's why we're going to complete the process.
My question is kind of along the lines of Margaret. You know, we brought it up before, but I don't think we actually moved on anything. We have green space all over the county. We're going out, we're going to rebuild these old junky buildings, and we have all these problems that we have to mitigate or don't have to mitigate or whatever, when it may be way cheaper just to build a beautiful something that everybody can go into in a big open space with lots of parking and cost less, you know, and we haven't really discussed it. Mike brought it up probably 5 months ago, you know, and you know, we're moving and we're not talking about that. We haven't got any costs, and I'd like to really see what's the difference in pricing. Going to a big, giant, beautiful green space that we can make any way we want, or going to these old junky buildings and then trying to retrofit them.
I respond to that. First of all, Steve, I appreciate you guys having brought that up. It has been discussed for many years. We discussed it. We went through a process with White and Company and spent over $500,000 probably total on a facility review and a master plan document. And there was a lot of talk for years about satellite facilities or outside the downtown area. And the decision was pretty much made to stay in downtown Joliet, primarily because we have all these other assets down here. And I think the die was kind of cast when we built the jail expansion, putting another $70 million or $60 million into that facility. The cost may be cheaper to build the court facility at Greengrass site, but that creates all kinds of inefficiencies of transporting people and prisoners and everything else. That's why the downtown footprint was picked as kind of the primary site for this. Because if if we were to go to a green grass site, the cost would be astronomical. I mean, if we're gonna go to a green grass site, we should move everything on it down.
That's what I said, move
But
everything
that's,
to it.
but that's
We
not.
just built the
We
jail.
just built the
We just
jail.
built the
They're
jail.
buying
You
the
know what?
social
Cook
security
County
building.
transports criminals all over the county.
They
And
do,
we're already
and there's a
transporting
cost
the criminals
associated
from
with
the
that.
jail, even though it's a short distance. So I'm not saying
Kane-
we have to do it, but let's look at the cost. Because you know what, just because they found, you know, whoever did the white, I wasn't here then. You know, and I had no, you know, and right now I'm saying, and I know Mike agrees with it, and then there's probably others that do, that we want to see that, why should we spend more money to have retrofit old junky buildings just to stay in here, when we put everything in one, everything
We're
over
not,
there?
we're not, for example, the First West Point, we're not retrofitting, we're going to tear it down and build a new.
So why would we build,
It's gonna be a brand new
the
building.
jail's here, the courthouse is here, what's wrong with having everything on one campus?
It is on one campus, it's an urban downtown campus.
Well, I'm talking about where you have the actual parking, you know,
It's-
parking lot.
It
Right,
invest-
that part
it-
will be
it-
You make it, you've been to those places, everyone's been to other places where everything is in one place, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna have beautiful buildings here and there, and we might have problems with asbestos, we might have problems with rock, we might have problems with whatever else. You know, so, I'm just saying, I'm not saying we have to do anything, but why don't we at least look at it? What's the
And
price
I
on
guess
it?
the question.
What's the difference in
is
price?
We have discussed that extensively in the past, and I realize you weren't here. I wasn't here when they decided to expand the jail, but it was being built when the county executive came in, and it proceeded, and it's a good, people compliment from other areas, our jail, that it was an attractive looking building, it's functional, it works, but the fact is, other counties like Kane chose to relocate their county facilities to a green grass site and did do that. We unfortunately didn't do that 20 or 30 years ago and secure a large number of acres. And because we've done the investments we've done, we're kind of locked into the downtown area. Now, you could, well, but we don't have enough dollars right now, Steve, to run the operation of our facility. To spend even more money to go to a green grass site to relocate everybody is just cost prohibitive. We'll never do it.
The question is, to do all these other buildings and retrofit everything.
We're not retrofitting. We're building, we're
We're
gonna build a
talking right
brand.
now of destroying them, you gotta, how much does demolition cost? Then you rebuild them, what do you gotta do to the foundations? What do you gotta, you know, compare apples to apples, not talk about something there and something else. Apples to apples, what does it cost us to do what we're talking about? What does it cost us to have a green space? And
It sounds
just
like-
because we haven't moved 20 years ago, we can move now.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, Steve, and it sounds like it would be helpful for you to have an in-depth look at the White study, because it does look at all of those kinds of things. It looks at where the jail is now, looks at the possibility of green space, what our needs are, what our commitments are. And so it may be, did you get a copy of the disc and have a chance to look through that?
Well, one of the things is, when that was made, the cost for the land was a lot higher than it is now.
The latest study of White wasn't that long ago. It's been since I came onto the board.
I
So
know
it may
it-
be
I know.
helpful to go through that, and it may be that, maybe this committee would do well to have White come in and talk through that plan again, so everybody knew or gets up to speed. Maybe that would be helpful. Would that be a thing that you would use?
I'm just trying to,
I understand
I'm
what you're
not
saying, but
saying
I'm wondering
anything bad
if I
with
can
it.
help you get some better information.
I'm not saying anything is bad with the White study.
No,
I'm
I'm
just
not
trying
saying that, I'm
to,
saying if I can get you a better understanding of it, then maybe you can see better how the pieces fit together and why we are where we are. So I'm wondering,
I'm
would that
just
be
looking
helpful
at
for you?
dollars and cents, and then what you get in the final product. And there's a question in my mind that the White study's gonna produce this for X amount of dollars, and then you could get this other thing for X amount of dollars, and the better thing would be cheaper, you know, the second.
Okay.
Maybe, I'm not even saying it is, I'm just saying maybe. So why don't, you know, before you start making moves, you know, if you're gonna buy something for your house, if you're gonna buy a home, you would check all kinds of different things before you bought a home. You wouldn't just go out and buy the first one you thought was pretty.
Right, and
So-
you make a good point. The only thing that you're missing is that has happened already. That's the piece that you're not getting, is that has happened already. But it may be helpful to you to be brought up to speed on what did happen before, so that you'd have a better picture of what got looked into, what didn't, so that
And
you're more on
explains
even
how we
plane.
got to where
But
we
it
are
does,
now.
the information does explain how we happen to be here. So that may be helpful for you. Bob, you had a question?
Yeah, I got one comment and one question. I understand what you're saying, Steve, on that, and I would say that I agree with the clean slate type development. But also, I have to take into consideration too, that basically what's going to happen here is if we vacate the city of Joliet, we're going to create another problem of urban decay. And at the same time, there's a cottage industry around that courthouse right now in downtown Joliet. I mean, the restaurants, the office buildings, that type of stuff. There's a contribution of real estate tax dollars back into it. And also too, that even once we do the future courthouse, there is going to be no real estate tax dollars from there. But at the same time, you're drawing people into old downtown Joliet. And downtown Joliet is not one of my destinations other than, coming to
You know what,
here.
maybe Joliet should
Let
pay
him
part of
finish.
the fee.
Wait.
Yeah, and I understand that. So, at the same time, would it be more economical to, have a clean site, nothing on it? Yes, it probably would, but at the same time, the secondary benefits and the long-term benefits, I think, are going to be greater if the building is built down here. And I know there was a lot of years and a lot of board members that actually have been moving towards this all along, and maybe it's too late in the game, but I do agree with that campus concept or whatever. And the second thing I'd like to bring up along that lines, is there any talk about saving the facade on it, or is it going to be a group in the future that's going to say, look, this is historic Joliet, with First Midwest, or, is there going to be any pressure from anybody in the future to actually keep, like they did on Old Maxwell Street, where you actually kept the old facade of the building and actually just put the new building behind it? Is that going to be something? Because, and I'd like to finish the comment on it, is that basically years in hindsight, when they tore down the old courthouse, there was a beautiful historic courthouse. All they left was the foundation. Today, that wouldn't have happened. Basically, they would have left that facade there at the bare minimum and actually put the concrete structure behind it. I'm just asking that question, and if that's been approached. And if I think that should be spoken out loud consistently, so that it doesn't become an issue in the future. So that's my question.
The very quick answer to that is, there has been, I don't know whom has raised that, but someone had raised that at one point. And we had discussion with the city of Joliet that they would specifically commit to not seeking historic designation. I don't think there's anything that historic, unique about the existing First and West, but we had in draft documents that were never finalized or approved, but we would still intend, the board agree with this, to include that in the final IGAs with the city of Joliet, to include language to that regard, because although that was considered in one of the many options of White, of possibly keeping that building, building around it, or building on city facade, we, and the board, I think, agreed that wasn't our plan. And this kind of goes to Steve's point of, we want to build a modern port facility that's efficient and is modern, uses all the energy efficiency and everything else, and not build another old building. Because we've got plenty of place.
Which does not preclude us recapturing some of that stone from a green perspective, someplace in the building. Whether it's, knee walls out front or in landscaping or whatever, so that's just gonna be a part of it.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to run through the next three items very quickly because I know we're short on time. The sewer and water project, this has been an ongoing project. We will have more details for you next month, but I just wanted you to be aware there is an internal meeting with the consultants, DLR and HR Green. This project was, routed through PBC. They've been working with them, so we have a meeting coming up next week to get an update on the status. The city of Joliet and HR Green have been working on acquisition of the right-of-way for the route. So we will give you an update on that soon. And once we have that internal meeting, we're also going to meet with the city of Joliet to see how we expedite this, because it obviously is not ready to bid just yet, and we want to light a fire under the table. So The next step after that would be to finalize IGAs with the city of Joliet, to formalize what they're already doing on that sewer and water project, and the other trades downtown with the Chicago Street parking decks, et cetera. And at the same point, bid this project out so we get sewer and water to the Clearway Road facilities. In conversation, and you all know this, anybody who's been on the tours in the past, the sewer, septic fields, I should say, are in bad shape, and that's a real problem out there, so we want to get this resolved.
Just a quick question on that too, just for clarification. We're paying for the sewer and water to go to.
We're paying for the site to get to the site.
But there's also an agreement in there too, is my understanding, for recapturing some of the fees. So let's say 20 years from now, they develop along that corridor, actually, we're going to be paid the county, correct?
We are seeking a recapture agreement so that if there is any ability to recapture dollars, we would get that, yes. And we don't have a firm number on what that would be.
Sure.
It's all at projections because it's a lot of open space right now for the most part.
But the taxpayer 20 years from now,
We would,
if
if we
we
get
assure
any
that
back, we would get money back.
for an investment, there's probably going to be some type of return.
Right.
Might
And
not be-
Joliet has agreed that they would do
Sure.
that, and that's part of the discussions to recapture.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, my question is, my understanding is that no progress has been made on this in respect to the right-of-way. And this brings back to the point about us being, are we or are we not the largest employer in downtown Joliet? And is the city, or is it not, lost without us? And if both of those are true, and I think they are, then why are they doing us this way? It's completely unacceptable. I don't like their attitude. I don't like their lack of cooperation. And I find it inexplicable. They need us. Why are they not, they're not doing anything. They're not even pretending to do anything.
Well, I appreciate your frustration, and that's right, but I don't believe all of it lies with City of Joliet. I think some of it, this is why we're having this meeting with our vendor.
It's HR Green.
I don't know what the problem is, but this should have moved along quicker, and we're not getting a lot of information. Well, that's where we're having a meeting. I don't want to point fingers, but it's where we want to get it done. And I think it's in part because of, but there's a responsibility all the way around, so I don't want to. We're going to have this meeting, we're going to get it done in the City of Joliet.
When is the meeting?
Next
Monday.
week, Monday.
Is anybody from county board going to be there?
It's my meeting.
Okay, all right, good. I'd like to make sure that somebody from capital improvement's there, because I'm
We have
not,
representative
I
from
mean,
ABC also.
I joined this committee a year ago. As far as I know, nothing has happened on this sewer and water.
I don't
That's
know,
not
nothing
exactly
is.
true, but it's not where I want it to be. Nick and I have talked about this, it's not where we want it to be, where I expect it to be at this point in the year. So we're having a meeting on Monday to talk to people who are responsible for moving it for us.
Because now we've got another
So we
spring
can
where
see
our
where-
employees are at the Speedway. Yeah,
I agree. We share your
and we should have
frustration.
had that problem solved by now.
We share your frustration. and we're gonna-
Absolutely.
And I, yeah.
So,
I was gonna say, I'm baffled too. If we can't get a $5 million pipeline dealt with, and Joliet is holding this up, then we're gonna build a big building down here? This is my frustration.
I don't
with Joliet.
understand this.
There's more to it. Yeah, there's.
I mean,
Well, then what more is there to it?
well, to be
What do
fair,
what is,
Tom Tanis
what
left.
secret agenda is
Mel
there?
Rule
There's-
is
I don't think
deceased,
there's
who was head of PDC. There has been some changes in the
Well,
players.
before they left, there had been nothing done either. They were here almost a whole year and nothing happened.
But when,
I would
I
say-
admit, since they departed, nothing's happened,
I-
but nothing happened before they departed either.
I would say hold your
Yeah, hold your horses.
horses until we can have this.
My
meeting.
job as a member of this committee is to hold people's feet to the fire, and I don't think that anybody here is the people that need their feet held. I'm not suggesting that it's you, Nick, or that it's our committee.
I
I'm
would
not
agree, that's
suggesting
not
that
the
in the
issue.
slightest. But
That-
I'm just urging you, and if you need me to come, I'm more than happy to be part of that conversation.
And I would agree that there's feet that need to be in the fire, not just held towards it. And certainly it's not this committee, but that's our work on Monday. Mike, you had a question?
no, I was just gonna say, I don't care if people change. You just said people change in the sport, but there was already a plan in place to build something. There was already a plan to do this with Joliet. They shouldn't be using this guy changed or another guy changed, is their excuse.
And I don't know that it's necessarily Joliet, that's why Nick is saying, let's
Okay.
not point the fingers, and that's
But
why
we
we're
have
gonna
heard in
have.
the past that Joliet was,
And they have
you
not,
reported
they
on
have
it,
had
there
some
were
issues in the
holdups.
past. I don't know if it's them or it's Green or a combination of the two, and that's why we're gonna have the discussion on Monday to sort it out completely, and get to the bottom of it so that we can move forward. So before we,
That's
before we,
Monday,
7:10.
Oh, the 10th.
10th.
Before we, call any names, we want to have that discussion. Don?
I haven't been to see the Dora building yet, but maybe the Dora building's big enough to store the sheriff's new bus, and we can move the people from the Eagle building into the Dora building, and we can, take some of the people out of the sheriff's facility and move them into the Dora building, and we can forget about the sewer and water, and we can just fix the septic field because there'd be a lot less use.
There's a thought. Okay, Nick, did you have something else?
I would just touch on the last two
And
announcements.
then we'll keep the parking lot, and we'll keep Chicago Street.
Yeah, why not?
It's an option.
Okay.
Why not?
Enough to,
Let's think about
we've got a plan to follow this. So this is part of the plan, Court Annex, just to give you touch base on, Court Annex, also known as the AMCO building. As I talked about the dominoes, this design work is continuing on the fourth and fifth floors there. As we move, per our plan, people out of there, we're gonna, the plan is to renovate another whole building, renovate those floors, move the rest of the state's attorney into that building, and we'll be done with 121 North Chicago Street, which is identified as one of our most problematic buildings. So we're working towards bid documents and schedule work on that. Next steps are to finalize plans, where exactly all those people go, and timing for that, so we will be reporting back to future months. And then the last thing is just an FYI to you, is our office, along with the county board and others, we've been working with the courts on a lot of things. One of the issues that is continuing to come up is records management over on Nicholson Street is our county records retention facility. We are required by law to keep any legal documents, evidence, et cetera. It's also kind of the storage, one of the storage spaces for the county clerk, court reporters, et cetera. That space is full or is very full. There's a constant effort to get rid of stuff that we can get rid of, but the laws are that they are. We have to keep some of the evidence forever or for years and years and years. So I would just propose maybe at some point maybe a good field trip for this committee to visit that facility, but also consider this in the larger picture of what we're doing as far as integrated justice, evidence storage, the sheriff and the courts and the courthouse planning, that this is an important piece, and we may need to eventually look at purchasing, dare I say, some additional space, because it's just, there is no more space left. And it's not like we can, as much as we put stuff online, microfiche, there are a lot of documents we just cannot get rid of or required by law.
I can't recall from the White study about the plan for this building or the plan, because I know there was something in there about additional space. Were we going to utilize some space at the new courthouse for some of this storage, or were we gonna build something at the Laraway project? I can't really recall. Did we have something identified? Because I know we knew there was a need.
For Laraway, both in the White study and DLR, there was talk about evidence storage, which is specific to the sheriff. But that's not so much at, the records management facility isn't so much sheriff's evidence, it's more evidence from the courts. And the circuit clerk has a temperature control space, the county, all the departments, state's attorney, county executive, county board has space.
Did we have something picked out though?
There was no
Not necessarily
formal.
I didn't think so. That's why I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't missing something.
Okay, just a minute, Margot. Finance meeting is going to start in the other room. There are a number of people here who are here for that. If you want to go in, if you want to leave us, you're starting in the other room. Margot?
Okay, we need to perhaps consider outsourcing some of this stuff. You know, send it,